The shortest war in human history lasted just 38 minutes. How did an entire war begin and end in less time than a soccer match? This is the story of the Anglo-Zanzibar War of 1896, a conflict that erupted on a sun-drenched morning in East Africa, pitting the might of the British Empire against the small, defiant Sultanate of Zanzibar. It was over almost as soon as it began, leaving behind a smoking palace and hundreds of casualties. To understand why the British Empire was prepared to go to war over a tiny island sultanate, you first need to understand Zanzibar itself. In the late 1800s, this was no sleepy backwater. Zanzibar was a bustling and strategically vital hub of commerce. For centuries it had been the heart of a vast trading network, connecting the African interior to Arabia, India, and beyond. Its markets overflowed with ivory, spices, especially cloves, for which it was world famous, and, most controversially, enslaved people. The Sultan of Zanzibar controlled a significant stretch of the mainland coast. This strategic importance had not gone unnoticed by Great Britain. The British had a vested interest in the region for several reasons. Firstly, they were leading a global campaign to abolish the slave trade, and Zanzibar was one of its last major centers. Secondly, Zanzibar was a perfect naval base, a crucial stepping stone for protecting the sea lanes to India, the jewel in the British Empire's crown. By the 1890s, Britain had effectively established a protectorate over Zanzibar, meaning the Sultan ruled, but only with London's approval. The British consul wielded immense influence, effectively vetting and approving each new sultan. The spark came, as it so often does in history, with the death of a ruler. On August 25, 1896, Sultan Hamad bin Thuwaini died suddenly at his palace. Hamad had been a reliable partner for the British. He had come to power 3 years earlier with their blessing, and largely cooperated with their agenda. His death was not just a personal tragedy, it was a political crisis. The prime suspect in whispered rumors of poison was his ambitious cousin, Khalid bin Barghash. Whether Khalid had a hand in it is debated by historians, but he acted fast to exploit the situation. Within hours before the British could manage succession, Khalid made his move. He gathered supporters and marched to the palace complex, barring the gates, entering the main residence and declaring himself sultan. The British had already chosen their man, Hamud bin Mohammed. Hamud was seen as more pliable and pro-British, ready to sign treaties. Khalid bin Barghash was different. Known for independence and anti-British views, he threatened the British-controlled system. He declared the Sultan should be chosen by Zanzibarists, not by foreign diplomats in London or by the British consul on the island. The British response to Khalid's coup was immediate and uncompromising. The acting British consul, Basil Cave, had no intention of negotiating. Along with Rear Admiral Harry Rawson, they viewed Khalid not as a monarch, but as a rebel who had illegally seized power. Cave immediately sent a series of demands to the palace. These were not requests, they were ultimatums. He demanded that Khalid lower his flag, dismiss his troops, and leave the palace immediately. Khalid was given until 9 o'clock in the morning on August 27th to comply. To back up this threat, Admiral Rawson began assembling his naval forces. The fleet was led by the cruiser HMS Philomel, soon joined by HMS Thrush, HMS Sparrow, the flagship HMS St. George, and the gunboat HMS Raccoon. These were modern steel warships armed with powerful, quick-firing guns capable of leveling the wooden palace in minutes. Khalid, however, refused to back down. He sent a reply displaying confidence that bordered on arrogance. "We have no intention of hauling down our flag, and we do not believe you would open fire on us." As the sun rose on the morning of August 27, 1896, the atmosphere in Zanzibar was thick with anticipation and dread. Precisely at 9 o'clock in the morning, the deadline expired. The flag of the Sultanate of Zanzibar was still flying proudly from the palace flagpole. 2 minutes later, at 9:02 a.m., the gunboat HMS Thrush fired the first shot. A shell screamed across the short expanse of water and slammed into the palace. The Anglo-Zanzibar War had begun. The British bombardment was overwhelming from the very first second. Royal Navy warships unleashed a furious, devastatingly accurate hail of fire. High explosive shells tore into the wooden Beit al-Hukam palace. Huge chunks of ornate woodwork were blasted into the air. The royal yacht HHS Glasgow attempted a brave but futile resistance. It was like a rowboat attacking a battleship. Multiple shells struck and crippled the Glasgow. Holed below the waterline, the Glasgow began to sink, settling on the shallow harbor floor. Inside the palace, the scene was one of utter chaos and carnage. British shells ripped through rooms, igniting fires. Realizing his life was in imminent danger, Khalid bin Barghash fled. He escaped through a back exit of the palace complex. At 9:40 in the morning, Admiral Rawson gave the order to cease fire. The bombardment was over. The entire conflict, from the first shot fired by HMS Thrush to the ceasefire, had lasted 38 minutes. When the smoke cleared, the scale of the devastation became horrifically apparent. The magnificent palace complex was a smoldering shell. More than 500 of Khalid's followers were killed or wounded. In stark contrast, the British forces suffered only a single casualty. Having abandoned his men, Khalid bin Barghash found sanctuary within the walls of the German consulate. A few weeks later, Khalid was smuggled out by German sailors and transported to German East Africa, where he lived in exile for many years. With Khalid gone and his forces crushed, the British moved quickly. Within hours, their preferred candidate Hamud bin Mohammed was installed as Sultan. His first official act was to sign a decree abolishing slavery, a key British objective. The British forced the new government to pay for the shells used to destroy their own palace, a final humiliation. A much smaller, more modest ceremonial palace was built in its place, a visible reminder of the Sultanate's diminished status. While the Anglo-Zanzibar War holds the record for being history's shortest, its significance extends far beyond that quirky fact. The war was a textbook example of gunboat diplomacy, using the threat of overwhelming naval power to force smaller nations to concede. The swift victory sent a clear message to any other local rulers who might consider resisting British authority: defiance is futile. For Zanzibar, the war marked the end of true independence. The Sultan became a figurehead. Real power rested with the British consul. History is full of strange, pivotal moments. A war shorter than a lunch break, a conflict decided before the smoke had even cleared. It reminds us of the immense power imbalances that shaped our world. This is more than a footnote. It's a story about power, about defiance, and about the day an empire's patience ran out in 38 minutes. History is full of strange stories like this. Subscribe if you want to hear more fascinating tales from the past.